Listen, guys. Listen. I said listen to me, you're not listening. No, don't open the tab. Don't look at this. Go back to playing Minecraft, but listen carefully. The new incarnate weapon, the secondary? The Leatum? I don't know how else to put it. It absolutely fucking slaps. It is so unbelievably strong. I've seen more than one title proclaiming this to be the best secondary in this entire game now. Which usually I would roll my eyes because clickbait be clickbait. But this weapon probably is the strongest secondary in the game right now. I cannot think of another weapon that beats it in terms of, both DPS, but at the same time actually being practical. Because sure, it deals a million damage, but you have to reload after every shot. That's not useful. This is very useful. Large enough AoE and a ton of damage. Let me show you guys how I built this weapon. I absolutely love this gun, so much fun. Oh yeah, we'll get back to that. But first up, let me just show you the evolutions that I've chosen. The most important one being the last, we'll just go through them real fast. 20% fire rate and more reload speed, stacking up to 3 times on headshots, which is what you have to do to get the incarnate's meter up anyways. This doesn't come into play very often because while the incarnate mode is active, you don't need to reload at all. So I want to say that you usually get about 100% faster reload speed every minute or so. That's how often you need to reload. But the other options also related to reloading, so this was just the best of 3 bad choices. Next up, I've chosen that headshots now build up more incarnates on each hit. The other options were pretty good as well, but it definitely feels way more fluent to play with it this way. The other options didn't really necessarily help it to deal more damage, and since we want to be in the incarnate mode as much as possible because that's where the real damage comes from, I picked this one. And then finally, and this is the most impactful one, this is pretty insane. Whenever you deal a hit that is not a critical hit and does not apply status effect, you will get 400% more damage, and this stacks 3 times and it lasts 20 seconds. The way that it works is that every time you get a new stack, you refresh the old stacks as well. So as long as you hit an enemy and don't crit them nor apply a status effect every 20 seconds, you will have the full buff, which is 1200% more damage. That is a lot. That is the same as, that's almost the same as 3 active secondary merciless arcanes being active at the same time on top of everything else. And the weapon itself is not bad. Let me go and show you just in its normal mode what it can do to enemies. So right now we don't have any stacks, we don't have galvanized diffusion, we don't have our merciless stacks, we don't have our buff on the weapon itself, the 400% per each stack. And let's go ahead and do a single headshot with this weapon. I said let's go ahead and do a headshot with this weapon. Wrong weapon. There we go, that's more like it. Again, this is the 185 heavy gunners. Sorry about that. And as you can see, it already deals a ton of damage, and it has pretty good fire rate as well. And then of course you go into the incarnate mode and it just absolutely destroys everything in its path. Super great, but you've already seen this on the steel path, so you don't need any more demonstrations. You just want the build. Very well, let me go ahead and show it to you. So this is what I've decided to go with. Now you might be wondering, well, why are you building critical chance on this weapon if you're supposed to not deal critical and you're not supposed to deal status? But the thing is, you can still do that. You're still welcome to go ahead and deal your status and deal your critical hits. It will still give you more damage. You still want these things, just neither of them can be at 100%. Right? Because remember, you only have to deal 1 hit that does neither every 20 seconds, right? So right now, every 35% of the time, so roughly every 3rd hit won't crit. And out of those hits, every 2 out of 3 hits won't apply a status effect, right? So essentially, you're gonna have to hit the enemies just about 4 times on average every 20 seconds to maintain this buff. And you know, in case you've forgotten, once, like even when we're not in the incarnate mode, when you're on the steel path, which is where this buff is relevant, and you have enemies coming at you, you just keep shooting, and you know, there certainly is not 20 seconds between every 4th shot. So even with this amount of status and crit, you're still gonna get the buff, especially when the incarnate mode is active and you are dealing AoE to the hordes of enemies that will be coming towards you. This buff is gonna be up 100% of the time. Oops, we don't care about the Protea build, not for this video anyways. And anyways, so the rest of it, it's just a little bit more status. Now the reason why I'm using lethal turret is because I want as much multi-shot as possible. Remember, the way that we build our incarnate stacks here, it's by getting headshots. We don't care about killing the enemies. Okay, well, we do want to kill them, but getting a headshot in general will help charge the incarnate meter. And so hitting them with multiple shots from multi-shot, obviously, will give us more charge, so we can spend more time in the incarnate mode. That's why I put so much emphasis on multi-shot on this weapon. You see how we get a bit of fire rate from this mod, and I find this to be just the correct amount. Any more than this, and I find that I just end up using a few shots on each enemy, which will deplete your incarnate meter faster. You can think of your incarnate meter as just being one magazine for the incarnate version of the gun. We're using Expel because Expel is a separate damage modifier. If you don't want to use this, you can replace it with whatever you want to. It's up to you. Many great options, it's entirely your choice, but this is the most powerful, right? Don't want to change it, it's gonna be more powerful. If you do want to change it, you know. Anyways, that's your choice either way. And then here we are running Corrosive. This is more powerful against armor, so if you're going up against the Grineer, make sure you're using these damage mods, or at least these 2 damage types, and it has to be the first 2 damage mods, otherwise it might not mix correctly. That is important. Now if you're fighting the Corpus, you would probably want to do magnetic instead, which would be cold and electricity, so you would have to replace path on rounds with deep freeze. That's pretty much all there is to it. Obviously make sure you use a secondary merciless. That is pretty important because of the ammo max makes it so you have to reload less often. When you're not reloading, you're shooting the enemies, which is a DPS increase, which is why we're using this one. But if you're planning on going endless, this weapon is really good with headshots even in its incarnate mode. Therefore, you might want to use secondary deadhead. But that's only if you plan on going for more than 3 hours in a survival. Anyways, I think that's everything from me this time around. So consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one.